to remind board members and senior staff who are not speaking to mute their microphones. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will provide a gentle reminder or simply mute your microphone. Members of the public, we have a raise hand feature open. Please do not use that feature. If you raise your hand, we will not call on you. Instead, we will announce when we are ready for public comment, and you can make your public comment at that time. We have the agenda and board meeting materials available for you if you'd like to go up to File, File Transfer, select the file, and click on Download. And we're showing directions for that right now. If any attendees utilize a profane name, they will not be called upon during the public comment section. To prevent public members from being subjected to profane language, while you are free to express your criticism or negative views, for the sake of the members of the public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the board. And to facilitate public comment, we will be using the WebEx question and answer feature. When the board president reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, public comment will be requested, and at the board's direction, I will turn on and announce the opening of the question and answer feature. And at this moment, now I'm ready to turn the meeting over to the board president.
Time, I would like to call meeting to order. Secretary Serrano, please proceed with roll calls.
Tian Feng.
Here.
Denise Campos.
Here.
Nelson Serrano, present. Malcolm Brett.
Here.
Pascual Gutierrez. Sylvia Kwan.
Here.
Ebony Lewis.
Here.
Robert Pierman.
Present.
Charles Sunny Ward.
Here.
Okay.
Tian, this is Gabe. I'm letting you know on Pasquale's behalf. I have him on the phone, and he's also present. He is trying to join.
Pascal, do you want to clear you are in the meeting? Okay, here not response from him. He can always join us in a later time whenever we think he sign in. So at this time, it's about 10:45. We like for the meeting to start the meeting because we have the quorum. I have a couple of procedural remarks, and some of this already spoke by the moderator. This is a web-based board meeting and is being webcast. And per Governor's Newsom's Executive Order N2920, dated March 17th this year, a physical meeting location is not being provided. A board member, please keep the microphone muted when you are not speaking. However, we advise the members and also staff to keep their camera on during the meeting. When you wish to speak, you can use the raise hand feature, which is on the lower right of your screen, and also supplemented by raise your hand physically in front of the video, so we can make sure that you are in the turn to speak. When you speak, do identify yourself each time you speak. So we have, as you heard, we have a guest member attending with us from Landscape Architect Technical Committee, Andy Bolden. And I understand that he is going to conduct his next LATC meeting via web meeting as well. So he's here to observe. Welcome, Andy. So at this time, I'd like to repeat some voting and other requirements. Just make sure all motions and the seconds will be repeated for the record. And the votes on motion will be taken by roll call. So it may take a little bit time because we have to switch to Secretary Nyota Serrano, and then she will start calling each member. So it takes a few minutes delay. So with that said, we can start with our agenda item. Then we will proceed with a public comment period. So I like to have our director, Laura Zanika, to give a quick summary of our department's recent affairs, Department of Consumer Affairs. Laura, take on.
Good morning, this is Laura Zuniga. We actually didn't get our regular update that we usually get from the Department of Consumer Affairs. They've been working really hard on the COVID-19 response, as well as dealing with office closures this week. So as we get additional written updates, I will provide them to the board members in the future.
So you have?
Yes.
Okay, good. So at this time, we like to open to public members who are attending this meeting. If you have any comment not already on the agenda, and you're welcome to speak up. And I understand you have 2 minutes limitation when you do speak up.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. This is the moderator, and I have now opened the question and answer panel. If you're a member of a public and you would like to make a comment, please type, I would like to make a public comment in the ask field and send it to all panelists. Please do not type your question, just simply type you would like to make a comment like we're showing on the directions, and we will unmute you in the order that you submit your request. It is not necessary to identify yourself before you make your comment, and we will now take a few minutes to give you a chance to do that. If you are not seeing the question and answer panel, go ahead and click on the question within a box at the bottom of your screen, and that should reveal it to you. Thank you.
As public is prepared for their comment, if any, I like to remind the board members again, do not discuss or take actions on any items raised during this public comment period. However, we can refer them to a future meeting if we choose so. So just a reminder again.
And this is the moderator. I am seeing no requests for public comment at this time. Shall I close the question and answer panel?
If you don't also see any seems of public member log on our any list, I think we can move on our next agenda item.
Okay, I will go ahead and close the question and answer panel at this time. Thank you.
Okay. So we have now agenda in front of us, agenda number E, review and possible action of February 28th board meeting that took place in Sacramento.
I move to approve.
Second.
Second. Oh, someone beat me to it.
So I have Sylvia Kwong made a motion and Nyota Serrano seconded. Secretary Serrano, could you call the roll?
Chiang Fang,
Yes.
Denise Campos,
Aye.
Nelson Serrano, aye. Malcolm Brett,
Aye.
Pascual Rodriguez, Silva Kwan,
Aye.
Ebony Lewis,
Aye.
Robert Perlman,
Aye.
Charles Ward.
Aye.
Thank you. Tian, you're muted.
Okay, sorry, I repeat. We're now on agenda item F, discuss and possible action on adoption of proposed California Code of Regulation, Title 16, Division 2, Article 10, Section 165, about continuing education. And before we take any actions, I'd like staff Marcus Reinhardt to give a presentation and walk us through the proposed changes. Marcus?
This is Marcus. So Business and Professions Code 5600-05 mandates that as a condition of license renewal, architects complete 5 hours of continuing education on disability access requirements. Last year, Senate Bill 608, which was our sunset bill, amended that section of the BPC and requires the board promulgate regulations by January 1st, 2023. Those regulations would establish qualifications for CE courses and providers. So we've been working with Legal Affairs, with Tara and Ryan in Legal Affairs to develop a regulation, section 165, that you have in the packet, the language, and we're presenting it for your consideration for approval. There is an explanation for the rationale for each subsection also provided in the cover. We are asking the board to consider this proposed language. Does the board have any questions?
No question, but can I, Marcus, I suggest a little bit more background, how this come about to the attempt to revise some of the provisions of the code.
So the sunset bill included language that specifically requires us to create the regulations, and that's developed over time because of how CE was implemented and how effective it's been over the now more than 10 years. It's been a requirement. When we looked at what would be necessary, we looked at how the licensees are currently going ahead and taking the courses. We looked at input from the Professional Qualifications Committee and some of the recommendations that were previously forwarded to the board. And then working with Legal Affairs, we proposed draft language that went through a review process. And the language focuses on some definitions. It also clarifies the 2-year timeline. It goes ahead and establishes the minimum qualifications for the courses, as well as establishing the minimum trainer requirements. That'll ultimately give it, what I would say, a better quality of training, because course providers will need to, if the board approves this and it runs through the process and gets approved, they'll need to provide an assessment at the end, which goes to better protect the public safety.
Thank you. So for the new members, board had extensive discussions the past 3 years or so, and had directed the Professional Qualification Committee working on that extensive as well. So that's why I suggested staff to give the context of this revisions.
I have a question.
And I have a question as well.
Okay, Tian, may I speak?
Please, Sylvia.
Thank you. On the first page, under rationale for the regulatory proposal, first paragraph, it says at the last sentence says, creating a new article leaves space available for future regulations in existing articles and easily identifies the subject matter of this regulatory language. I guess that does not widen the gap enough to allow for other types of continuing education, should that happen. I'm assuming, Marcus, that this particular change that you're, or documentation really only addresses the issue of accessibility for continuing education and doesn't really allow for other subjects to be brought in under this particular item. Is that correct?
Tian, this is Laura. If I might add to this, just this, these regulations are specific to the disability access. The other regulations that the board's considered and talked about at the Professional Qualifications Committee about expanding CE, that would have to be separate. So we would need statutory authority for that. This just means that if we did get that authority and needed regulations to develop that in the future, there would be a chance to add it in this area, but this is specific to the disability access, and the board doesn't currently have authority to go beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
Very good clarification, Laura. Thank you. And I hope that's helpful to the new members.
Is there any other questions?
I believe Nelsa had a question, and then I'd like to go after her.
Yeah, my question was more of about letting the members of the public, including the board, know what page we're on in terms of the documents on the screen, because we see a screen that is the presentation, but we also need to show where the actual item is. So we should be sharing that screen and not the screen with the PowerPoint slide. That's my comment.
This is the moderator. So if we go down the document that we're showing now, can you let us know where we need to stop or what we need to show?
Yes, go down to item F, as in Frank.
Thank you.
And my comment was regarding the page 1.
So are you okay with Laura's explanation?
Absolutely.
President Feng, I have a question. This is Denise Campos. I'd like to know if there's any fiscal impact to our budget, since there would be the requirement of a certified access specialist.
This is Marcus. So we in the language are allowing CASPs, the certified access specialists, to be qualified, but we're not limiting it to them. We have actually several qualifications, including a person being a licensed architect that would be able to do it. As far as a fiscal impact, there's none to our budget. But I don't know if, for example, an individual wanted to go out and become CAS certified. That would be a decision that they would be making on their own, because it's not specifically restricted in the language to a CAPS certified individual.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just want to make sure that this is the qualification of a provider. The potential impact to our business practice is that will increase the enforcement effort. I don't know if there will direct corresponding to the enforcement agent effort, but if anything happened in terms of a budgetary impact, it will be there.
This is Marcus. I would like to note for the board members that one recommendation from the PQC that is in here requires an individual who is found to be non-compliant, that they would have to make up those hours they were deficient. And that was definitely an item at the PQC meeting. The members had stressed they would like to see in the regulation.
Can you say what TQC is?
The PQC is the Professional Qualifications Committee.
Thank you.
Marcus, could you state that one more time? I kind of didn't quite understand what PQC said. Can you repeat?
Sure. So the Professional Qualifications Committee had discussed the idea that individuals who are found to be non-compliant would be required to make up those deficient hours, as currently that's not the case. If a person is currently found to be non-compliant, they're not compelled through any means to make up those hours. Now, if the board approves this language and it runs through the process and gets approved, then they would be required to, if they are found to be non-compliant, to make up those hours, in addition to the hours for the current cycle that they may be in.
Got it. Thank you.
This is Tara. I'd like to point out that I think Marcus is specifically referring to the regulation text, page 3, subsection J. That's where the whole non-compliance discussion is, and the specific provision in the reg.
I see that. Thank you.
So in summary, that this particular revision is to this particular regulation, which is about accessibility and ADA only. And the revision that we presented here is about some enhancement or clarifications, mostly to do with the provider's qualification. Marcus, if I correctly summarize what this effort is about, and let the board member know.
That's correct. It's primarily about establishing the requirements for the courses and the providers, as well as addressing those segments of the statute that were not clear enough for licensees, in particular, the period of the 2 years.
So this is a question for Marcus and Laura. So therefore, if we wanted to actually expand the scope of these continuing education courses, then we would have to begin through the PDQ, the PDC or PDQ. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm getting all these acronyms mixed. Apologize. So therefore, the committee would have to begin, and it would have to, whatever we decide, the committee decides, it would then go through a statutory amendment. Is that correct? Maybe Tara can answer that.
This is Laura. That's correct. It would have to be a statutory change.
Okay. All right. So that's good to know that the PDC is the committee through which this information would be processed, correct?
That is the board's call if we want to refer to PQC or we want a full board as part of driving force.
Okay. Sounds good.
Sorry. This is Marcus. So currently there is a strategic plan objective for the Professional Qualifications Committee to explore continuing education. So while this regulation is going through and establishing those requirements for the providers and the coursework, we can, depending on the recommendation you see, then work through another regulatory package that would address other issues once we have the statutory authority to do so.
Thank you.
President Fang, Pasquale has his hands up.
Okay, great. Pascal, go ahead. Your turn.
That was just a signal that I'm in the meeting.
Oh, okay. So
Thank
just
you.
so you know, we are discussing the point, some of the revisions that the board is proposing for that continuing education for the ADA part.
Got it. I'm following along. Thank you.
This is Marcus. So the action that the board is being asked today, the board is being asked to consider the approved regulatory language to adopt California Code of Regulations Section 165 to direct the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, authorize the executive officer to make any technical or non-substantive changes to the rulemaking package, notice the proposed text for a 45-day comment period, and if no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, adopt the proposed regulatory changes.
Marcus, I have a suggestion. Looks like a board member, well, we have two thoughts going on here. One is any changes has any impact to our business operations budget. Two is since we are far more interested, the board is far more interested, enhance the scope of continuing education through other avenues. So I guess we can focus on the discussion here. You see as a staff any changes that we propose here have significant have business impact on budget and other things. They want just a cite one or two we can discuss. Otherwise, I suggest they be able to move on to next agenda.
Can we see if there's any comments from the public?
Definitely. I don't know if Marcus have done your presentation, Marcus.
There's no budgetary impact that is foreseeable in this. I mean, we're not requiring any new fees, so it wouldn't be receiving any revenue, and it wouldn't be something that we would be expending any costs on. As far as the public comment, we haven't received any comment on this yet because it hasn't been approved, it hasn't been posted. But if you're talking about for the meeting, I guess that's a question for the moderator, if there's anybody that has any comment.
Thank you. This is the moderator, and I have opened up the question and answer panel in case any of our members of the public would like to request to make a comment. If you do not see the Q&A panel, please click on the question mark within a box at the bottom of your screen. And please do not type your question, but rather simply type, I would like to make a comment, and then I will unmute you in the order that you submit your requests.
This is Tara. I'd also just like to note that if you can receive public comment right now, but if you go ahead and move to approve this regulatory action, you'll need to reopen public comment after that motion is made and before a vote.
I'd like to move to approve the item.
I'll second.
So Denise has made a motion and Ebony, I believe, seconded. Secretary Nyota. Oh, sorry, we have our council have a comment.
So that was Milza or Denise who moved?
Denise to move, Ebony second.
Okay, so Denise, do you adopt as your motion what Marcus read from the meeting memo, which is the action requested? It's very long text, but it's necessary.
Correct. Do you need me to read back any part of it?
No, I think it's probably sufficient for you to move Marcus's language regarding approving the motion.
Right. Move to approve as recommended by staff in the report.
Secretaries, Ronald, please call the roll.
I think we need to get public comment once the
that's
motion's
right.
on
Yes.
the table.
Any public comment? And we will run one more round again.
Thank you, Board.
I think we need to let you check.
Sure. Thank you. The question and answer panel is available for public comment requests. If you would like to make a request for public comment, please type "I would like to make a comment" in the ask field and send it to all panelists. If you do not see the question and answer panel, please click on the question mark within a box at the bottom of your screen. And Board President, I am not seeing any requests for public comment. Shall I close
Okay.
the question and answer panel?
Please,
Thank you.
let's move to the roll call.
Tian Feng,
Yes,
Denise Campos,
Aye.
Neil Cesarano, aye. Malcolm Brett,
Yes.
Pascual Gutierrez,
Yes.
Tara Khan,
Yes.
Evelyn Lewis,
Yes.
Robert Perman,
Aye.
and Charles Ward.
Yes.
Thank you.
okay, motion passes. Sarah, you okay? I move to next item. Okay. So we have next on agenda is item G, update on interdepartmental agreement with Office of a Professional Examination Service, OPES abbreviation, for occupational analysis and examination development. We will have staff Marcus Remhart continue to present on this item.
Hi, Tian, this is Marcus. The Office of Professional Examination Services is our test developer and is charged with providing professional psychometric services to our board and the other entities within the Department of Consumer Affairs. Part of the services they provide is examination development, examination validation, in addition to occupational analyses. With the current situation with the COVID, we haven't been able to conduct our examination development workshops in person. So the OPES recommended that we advance our timetable for the occupational analysis. Consequently, they and the board, we entered into an intradepartmental contract to commence the occupational analysis, and we're currently working through that process. Additionally, the current contract for examination development is due to come to an end at the end of this month. And we are presently working with OPES to finalize that contract. And that contract will run until June 30th of 2021. So this is more of an update to the board members to let them know where we're at on these two contracts. No action is requested. Are there any questions from the board members?
I have a question, Tim.
Yes, go for it.
Okay, so Marcus, I have two questions that are kind of related to this item. First of all, we have been getting some correspondence from test takers who were concerned, as you know, about the 5-year rolling clock. I'd like to know how this relates to it. And secondly, I just got notice, and I'm sure all NCARB people have, that NCARB's test sites are all reopening around the country as we speak. So NCARB is testing again in person, and I'm just wondering how those two items that I just mentioned might relate to this item.
John, this is Laura. If I might comment before Marcus does on
Yes,
the
please.
issue you asked about, Sylvia, about the candidates that have been impacted by becoming inactive. This doesn't impact those candidates. We've been dealing with them on a case-by-case basis and reaching out to them. But I'll let Marcus address the second question.
So this is Marcus. Like Laura said, there's no real impact there. And I'm sorry, the question, could you repeat that?
The second point was just the fact that NCARB has now opened their testing sites in person around the country. So I'm just wondering if we're able to do something similar and not delay anymore.
So PSI has opened, but in similar fashion to Prometric, they are opening at reduced capacity. So that's likely for the foreseeable future here. I don't have any information at present, but I can work with OPES to see if there's any changes, and I can provide that to Laura for a board member update.
Thank you.
Sure.
Just want to make sure the OPES is only help us on California supplementary exam.
Correct.
Yeah, so the Prometrics that announced by Endcard, that they still have to comply with the local and the state regulations, although they are business-wise could open. So I think this makes sense if our ability to host some kind of frequency, and we should be in alliance with the national testing effort.
That would really be ideal, Marcus, right? Because then people aren't, there's not a bottleneck when they get to California.
This is Marcus. Yes, we are working with OPES and PSI to try and see where they're standing at right now as far as the number of candidates that they're able to get into the pipeline at each test center. And I do want to add for the members that as of yesterday, NCARB and the ARE were added to the Essential Clients Programs list. So now candidates can test at all of the open Prometric test centers. There's no longer that restriction that previously existed when they first opened up. NCARB lobbied really hard to work with Prometric and be added to that list, and now they're on it.
I have a question for Laura and Marcus. So this is a routine agreement we have with OPES. This is a flat rate service, right? In terms of how many candidates taking fluctuates each year, has no impact on our agreement. That case?
This is Marcus. So the OPES contracts that are here, they're separate from examination. These only deal with the exam development and the occupational analysis. There is a contract that we have through OPES with PSI that deals with administration, and we forecast when we do those. So we forecast with a sufficient number that it should not have any overages, that should be in alignment. We base that on our prior testing years. So we look back at the prior few years, see how many candidates we have, determine how much of an overage we want to have, a cushion, if you will, and then that way we're not impacted by a sudden uptick in candidate testing. Did that answer your question, Tian?
Yes, yes, great. And great detail I was not aware of. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the subject?
Go for it. Cool.
Hi, this is Marcus. So there's no action on this item.
So we can now move on to item H, Mr. President.
Yes. Item H is update on Item H is update on possible actions on legislations regarding several fronts. There's a couple of 6 of them that Laura will present, and see if we need to take any actions. Laura, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Laura. Okay, so starting with item H1, Assembly Bill 1263 by Assemblymember Lowe. This bill is in the Senate Rules Committee. It prohibits or provides that a contract for services between a consumer and a licensee cannot prohibit the consumer from filing a complaint with the licensing board. So I don't know if this has been a significant issue in this industry, but it would apply to the whole Department of Consumer Affairs. And there's some information in the packet kind of describing the need for it. It came about due to a dental board issue. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, so that one's really informational. So I'm going to move on to the next item, which is H2, Assembly Bill 1616, also by Assemblymember Lowe. This requires a board within the department if they have a license that was revoked due to a licensee's conviction of a crime, the board would need to post, if they receive it, a certified copy of the expungement order for that crime, or if the individual reapplies for licensure, or if they are not licensed and do not reapply, the board would need to pull that information down from its website. This is sort of a continuation of legislation we've seen in the last couple of years on expunged convictions. I don't think this would have a significant impact on our board, but most likely on other boards within the department would have a greater impact.
Hi, Laura. For those of us who are less familiar with the legislative process, I believe there's a difference between the 1 year and the 2 year bills. And I believe this year with COVID-19 and the crisis, a lot of the bills have been, I don't know if like they've been closed or put aside because the legislature is focusing on other priority items. So are these all still on the table?
These are all still moving, so try to remove the ones that weren't. These are already in their second house, so they could still move. I think if they don't move due to COVID-19, I don't think we'd know quite yet because they still aren't that far along in the calendar. But that's a good point to raise, that the legislature compressed their calendar this year. They didn't move all the legislation they introduced. So some things aren't going forward at all. Any other questions on this item? Tara.
May I ask a question about the previous item? I'm sorry, my mic didn't work.
Sure.
That is about making complaints. Your staff report said that at the end of your staff report, it indicates there's already a law on that. And could you differentiate the proposed new one from the existing one a little bit?
The current law prohibits settlement agreements. So if there's a settlement agreement between a consumer and a licensed architect, that settlement agreement can't prevent the consumer from filing a complaint with our board. But this is going to extend that to the contracts for services, so proposed contracts. So before they get started. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Tara.
Okay, so back to Assembly Bill 1616. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at page 3 of the bill text, and the provision that would require the board, if a person is not currently licensed and does not reapply for a licensure, the board would have to remove the initial posting on its internet website that the person's license was revoked. I don't really know what that means. That doesn't seem clear. Do you have to remove the person entirely from the board's online system? Because otherwise, that's what shows that the person's revoked. You look up their name, it says license status revoked. So if we have to remove the posting that the person's license is revoked, we have to remove the person's name from the board's website?
Yeah, it seems like we would have to remove them from any kind of database that would appear on our website, but I think we'll need more clarification from the department as to how, if this bill goes forward, as to how they want us to interpret it.
Okay, I'm concerned that you guys have a lot of unlicensed practice citations that go out, and when you have someone who was previously licensed and they're revoked, I recognize that this is a particular situation. It's really only for individuals who had a criminal conviction for which they were revoked and that criminal conviction is expunged, you would have to go in and say, just remove them entirely so no one would know they were ever licensed with the board. It's a little confusing. I think that probably needs some clarification.
I agree too. I had a hard time to interpret it. Looks like to disadvantage of consumer protection from its surface.
So that's a good point. So since this bill impacts the entire department, I can follow up with the department's legislative office and see if they're working on any amendments or suggest that they ask for a change for clarification in this area. Okay. Any other questions on this item? So I'm going to move on to H3, Assembly Bill 2028. This bill was it was amended yesterday. It passed out of the Assembly Appropriations Committee. So it amends the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, and it requires all meetings of the body to be open to the public, and then have all the, which is current law, but then requires all meeting materials to be posted at least 10 days prior to the meeting date. That's the information that's in the packet. The bill was amended yesterday, and so now it requires the information to be posted instead as soon as it's made available to the board members. And then I believe at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting. So they were trying to address some of the concerns that were raised by some of the department's boards about whether they could comply with this requirement. So some of the boards had some significant cost estimates for complying with it. Our board didn't have that estimate. So I think they're still working on it and trying to get the right balance as to providing public access while making sure the boards can continue to do business.
I don't think there's any impact for us.
Right. For the most part, we try to get meeting materials up 10 days in advance, so same time that we post the agenda. So, any questions on this item?
Just a procedural question. If one of the items, Laura, we need to take action, and how do we do a motion and a vote? We just pick up, you said H1 or H6 or something?
Yes, I will ask for that on H6. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Looks like Robert has a question.
Robert Pearman has a question.
Robert Pearman here. Yeah, I thought, though, I would have opposed the bill as read. I understand the concept, but I think the 10 days is a bit much, and I think play down to 2 or 3 is more appropriate, and so we should probably keep an eye on that. Do you know if the amended bill has some sort of like emergency kind of escape clause that you could still act if there was something that came up even in less time?
I don't believe the legislation has anything like that, any kind of emergency. There is a separate provision, Bagley-Keene, for emergency meetings and notice requirements, but absent that, I don't think there's any type of way to avoid the requirement.
Okay. Like I said, I would watch it. I thought 10 was a little bit too much, and 2 or 3 makes more sense practically.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit better as they amended it yesterday. So hopefully it continues in that direction. Any other questions on that item? Okay, I'm going to move on to H4, which is Assembly Bill 3045 by Assemblymember Gray. This requires boards under the department to issue a temporary license to an applicant that is married to or in a domestic partnership with an active duty member of the armed forces of the U.S. under certain conditions. So this is also something the legislature has worked on for the last several years in terms of providing increased access for military spouses. So this is just one more route to do that. So the profession of architecture obviously already has a pathway to mobility. Maybe that some of the other professions in the department don't, but this is a bill, again, that impacts more boards under the department than just ours.
Can I ask a question? I thought just trying to help the military family and the veterans is definitely something we want to do, but the language is not clear to me. So if the spouse is already, I totally assume, is already licensed in good standing in other jurisdiction, and he or she moved his partners to a new location such as California, so we should allow that spouse automatically practice in state of California without any additional, like they have supplementary exams, they should not take it. I know how does operationally be implemented? I'm not clear.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think that the language in the bill right now isn't entirely clear as to how that would work. It does. The authors indicated that they would want these applicants to still have to pass a supplemental exam or meet any of those requirements. I don't think it's 100% clear from the language, so I think they're working on further amendments to define that process. I think they envision that these people would still have to meet. They would attest that they meet the requirements, then they would have to take the supplemental exam as well. Tara?
This is Tara. So I'm looking at page 3 of the bill, line 6, and it would still require these applicants to meet all of the requirements for licensure and then attest that they meet all of those requirements. So this is really confusing as to how this changes the process for military spouses. Because arguably, if they're meeting all the requirements, they're doing everything else that they're required to do, even under this bill, they would get a license either way. So it's a bit muddled at this point.
Yeah,
Yes,
and they can get
that's
expedited
exactly.
under existing law. Yeah, so it may have limited benefit.
Seems not seeing the difference. How would this bill help them?
Yeah, I don't know that they've fully explained how they envision it's going to change the existing process. But any additional questions?
Robert, your hand is on. I don't know if you want to keep on. Now I do see Pascal want to speak, but Robert Pearman, your hand is on. Pascal, go ahead.
So I think the purpose, or one of the underlying purposes of the bill, is that it would provide military families, say if you're an architect married to and have a spouse in the military, that as they channel and distribute military personnel around the country, if they send them to a base where opportunities are available for economic stability for the spouse, that would be favorable to keep those bases open or make those. For instance, I'll use an example of Fort Ord in California. If we allow temporary licenses for spouses, then they wouldn't necessarily the military be inclined to close down Fort Ord because there would be an absence of financial viability for the spouse if they were assigned here. So I think that's one of the underlying purposes of this entire bill. I could be wrong.
Yes, thank you. That's a good point. I don't see any other comments. Okay. So our last item is H6, Senate Bill 1474. And this is a bill I would like the board to support if they're so inclined. It's an omnibus bill, so it contains provisions for different boards within the department, but it contains provisions for LATC, Landscape Architects Technical Committee, and for the board that the board approved at the December board meeting. So we have provisions to amend the Architects Practice Act to allow the holder of a retired license who last renewed it to active status less than 5 years ago to reinstate their license to active status without applying for a new license. And then for LATC, it contains the additional language they need to implement the fingerprint requirement that was in Senate Bill 608 from last year. Are there any questions about this bill?
No question about the bill. Just at some point, we have to ask ourselves when the Architects Board.
What was that last part, Tion? I'm not quite sure what you wanted to ask.
Our board states, how do we run into the fingerprint?
How are we going to implement fingerprinting?
Yeah.
So I can provide an update at the next board meeting. So it's something we're working on the internal processes right now. We need to have a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Justice, which we're working on. We have a custodian of records at the department, so that's one of the enforcement staff that'll be designated for that position. And then we'll develop procedures for the handling the information. So we'll fingerprint the staff here at the board that will have access to that information. And then we'll do additional outreach to licensees. So we'll look at requiring the fingerprints when they apply for and take the CSE exam.
This is Denise Campos, and this is an item we've just discussed before because the Architects Board did not require fingerprinting, right? So we would not have had that information if an architect or an applicant had previously had any kind of a record.
Right. The only way we would have it is if they voluntarily disclosed it.
So you mentioned earlier that you'd like our support, but I don't think this is an action item. How can we show support for this item?
The board could vote to support the bill for SB 1474 as it is currently in print.
Okay, so someone can make a motion now?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to move to support that item.
Thank you.
Second.
Oh,
I think that's Nielsa that seconded.
Nielsa second. Okay.
And then we would just need to ask for public comment.
Okay. Any public comment?
This is a moderator. I will go ahead and open the question and answer panel. All right, the question and answer panel is now available. If you would like to make a public comment, please type, "I would like to make a comment" in the ask field and send it to all panelists. If you are not seeing the question and answer panel, please click on the question mark within a square at the bottom of your screen. This is the moderator. I'm not seeing any request to make public comment. Would you like me to close the question and answer panel?
Yes, please.
All right, I will do that.
Nielsa, please proceed with roll call.
Sorry. Tian Fen,
Yes.
Denise Campos,
Yes.
Nielsa Serrano, yes. Malcolm Brett, Gladstone,
Yes.
Pascual Gutierrez,
Yes.
Sylvia Kwan,
Yes.
Ebony Lewis,
Yes.
Robert Kerman,
Yes.
Charles Ward.
Okay, motion passes.
And I apologize. I skipped over item H5. So thank you to him for pointing that out to me. If we could go back to Senate Bill 1168.
Please.
Okay. This bill by Senator Morrell requires a agency that issues any business license, which our license would be considered, to establish a process for an individual who's experienced economic hardship as a result of an emergency caused by a virus to submit an application to grant a deferral of fees. And then establishes a process to expedite licensing services for people displaced by an emergency. So this bill is in the Senate Appropriations Committee right now. I'm not sure what the total cost would be for all the boards, but if the hearing will be next week. So I will keep the board updated on this item.
So it's very specific to a virus.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's kind of interesting. People experience emergencies through a lot of things, but this is specific for this particular virus, really, and then any future iterations of it, I suppose. Do you think?
There was legislation last year by the same author that allowed for people displaced by economic hardship caused by a state of emergency.
Yeah.
Submit for a waiver. So I think perhaps this is just an attempt to clarify that this would qualify for that. This is that type of emergency. So we have that broader authority as well.
My question is, do we need to take action? Tara, please.
I don't know that this is clear enough either, because the definition in here is that a license means, or it includes a certificate, registration, or other document required to engage in business. That sounds like, you know, maybe you own a liquor store. But typically when I think of your license is issued by your board, it's a professional license. It's a license to engage in a profession, not a business. So perhaps that could use some clarification.
Yeah, Tara, I would agree with you that I typically wouldn't consider what we issue to be a business license. I think that's the author's intent, and I can't recall, he may be referencing back to another section of law, but I'll do some additional research on that point to see if it needs clarification.
To your point, Tara, it really talks about almost like replacing documents and possessions, which it says expenses pile up as victims must replace documents. So that's, I don't know what we charge to replace a document, but it can't be that much. So it's got to be more than that, don't you think? I mean, the intent was the actual cost of getting a license is sort of what I am thinking. But here it talks about a physical copy. So I'm a little confused about whether it's just replacing a physical copy or actually going through the process of getting licensed. So please explain.
I think it's intended for the physical cost of replacing that license that might be destroyed, not starting from fresh with a new license or someone who's trying to get licensed.
How much is that to replace a license? You know, a physical copy.
Hi, this is Marcus. It's $15 to replace each document. So your wall cert, the nice pretty one, not the green one. Each piece is $15 to replace.
I don't know.
I don't feel this is quite relevant to our profession. Either just let it go as long as we don't show our support. But if we do show our support, then we get to think, why this bill is so narrow? What about my house get flooded and my license gone? I suffer the same hardship. Then should I not pay my $15? Anyway.
The board doesn't have to take action on this item. We can just monitor it to see what happens. Again, this is one that applies to all boards within the department. So there's some that it might have a bigger impact for their licensees.
Okay. I agree with that.
Okay. I heard no actions needed. Any board member want to speak up? Any opinions on this? Here now, I think we're good for this agenda item. Quick housekeeping. We have options of continue finish 2 more items, and then we will take a natural break before we go into close the session, or we want to take a short break now if you feel necessary.
I could do a 5-minute break right now.
Okay, we do a 5-minute break, and we go come back right away at precisely 11:50. Thank you. Discuss National Council for Architecture Registration Board annual meeting. I believe we have 3 items that will be discussed. And Laura, please take the floor.
Okay, thank you. This is Laura. So this is agenda item I in the packet. It starts with the agenda for the NCARB annual meeting. So as the members may know, the NCARB annual meeting is typically a few-day event that a few of the board members and the executive officer attend. So they've changed it this year to due to circumstances. It's going to be an online meeting. It will take place mostly in one day, I think about a half day, and the meeting is primarily intended to elect the new board of directors for NCARB. So all members are able to register and attend the meeting. There's no cost for attending the virtual meeting if any of the members are interested. You should have received information from NCARB to register, or I can send it to you if you're interested. So the agenda is in here. It's pretty short. There is no regional meeting for our region, Region 6. So it's just the NCARB meeting itself. Are there any questions on that portion?
I'd like to make a comment. This, to me, it's a great opportunity for all of us, all board members, to attend this because, as Laura said, it's just going to be a few hours. And Brett and Sunny, for example, because you guys are new, you've never attended one of these meetings, this is obviously very truncated, but it will be very informative to you to understand how the process of NCARB goes, you know, how the machinery works, the voting process and so forth. It's unfortunate that there's no regional Western region meeting, but because that's when we take care of a lot of issues regarding WestCarb. But anyway, but at least they'll give you a good opening chance. So I hope you can join.
Yes, this is Brett. I didn't hear the date of it. Could you repeat that again?
Ooh, I think it is June 19th. Yes, Friday, June 19th.
Right. And Laura, can you make sure that all the board members did get their invitation? Because you do have to register yourselves.
Sure,
Okay?
I will send it out after the meeting to all the board members.
Great. This is a great opportunity for all of us to be there and have a voice.
This is Denise Campos, and I had the opportunity to go to the meeting in Boston in March with Nilsa and Sylvia, and it really gave perspective to some of the issues that national registration boards are facing. And I was really proud to represent California's contingency. It's definitely a lot more diverse and progressive than a lot of the other ones.
Yes, hooray to our governor and the selection process that we go through. We are literally the most diverse board in the entire country.
Oh, post child, huh? By the way,
Yeah.
Laura, why the meetings listed 4 days on their agenda?
Oh, some of that's technical reasons. They're going to have the voting delegates will have a meeting that Monday to understand how you're going to do your voting procedure electronically. They're going to open the voting on Tuesday, the 16th, and then the board of directors will meet on Wednesday. Thursday would be for the regions that we're not meeting, and then they'll close the balloting, and then Friday will be the actual business meeting for all attendees.
And for California, we have one vote, which is our president, correct?
Right, so that'll be the next item we take up, which is the letter of credentials for the vote. But yes, we have one vote, and normally the president would be the person casting the vote.
I have a question.
Please.
So I was just wondering is there a underlying reason that Region 6 is not holding the meeting?
Yes. The reason is, and by the way, I'm on Region 6, or we call it WestCarb. I'm on the executive committee, and I'm vice president. The reason is that there are no urgent issues to take up, and so we felt like those issues, whatever we have to talk about, can wait until the next meeting. And that really the only major issue to address this particular time is to elect the national board. So that's why.
Part of reason maybe the previous summit meeting, which is only 3 months ago. I understand that the Western region has a very good program, accomplished a lot on the business side. Maybe that's another reason.
That's right. We took care of a lot of issues. And then the other thing is there is something called, it's like a professional education program now that Westcarb does. We're the only region that does this. And it's because we had been operating on a surplus every year. And so the best way to sort of take care of bring down the surplus was to expend it on education, on continuing education for the board members. For we're called member board members. I know in the beginning I was very confused by the duplication, but it just means we're members of the member boards. And because we all represent such a diverse number of different states just within Westcarb in our region, and so many different issues, as Denise mentioned, they felt like some of the uppermost issues should be addressed through continuing education. And they do that via, I can't remember, you guys, it's either, I think it's 2 to 3 hours. And it would have been, I believe, in June. So that didn't need to happen, and et cetera. So that's why they decided to withhold the meeting. So they did do a survey of, we had a executive committee meeting, and the vote was to postpone the meeting.
Okay. So
All
if
right,
there's
go ahead
questions-
to the next item.
Okay.
Oh, yes,
So
someone
item
has a question?
I2. Are there any questions? No? Okay. So I2 is discuss and take action on letter of credentials for the annual business meeting. So there is the draft letter in the packet following the cover sheet, and it just appoints Qian Fang as the board president to be the voting member for the California Architects Board. But the board does need to vote to approve the letter before I submit it to Endcard.
Move to approve.
Second.
Are there any questions, any public comment?
This is the moderator. I will go ahead and open up the question and answer panel. Okay, the question and answer panel is now available. If you would like to make a public comment, please type, "I would like to make a comment" in the ask field and send it to all panelists. If you are not seeing the question and answer panel, please click on the question mark within a box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll wait a few moments. This is the moderator. I am not seeing any requests for public comments. Board President, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, I will do that.
Laura, if you want, you can add my credential to my name, FAIAFCSI.
Will do. I'll add to that.
Is that? Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Great. Tian Fan,
Yes.
Denise Campos,
Aye.
Elsa Serrano, yes. Malcolm Gladstone. Are you there? You're muted.
Aye.
Pascual Gutierrez,
Yes.
Sylvia Kwan,
Aye.
Evelyn Lewis,
Aye.
Robert Kerman,
Aye.
Charles Ward.
Yes.
So motion passed. We have a third and a final item on Endcard. I just want to give a quick remark. Most of the time, candidates are lined up without a candidate. In other words, by default, if any of you have issues or know someone specific we can raise the question and we can discuss. Normally, we just go along with what has been nominated. However, in 2 occasions in this year, there's 2 positions as more than one condensed. So I would looking for the feedback from the board if you have any opinion on that before I make that vote during the meeting. So Laura, take it over.
Okay. Looks like Sunny has a question.
Sunny, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I have a comment that's both related to this section and the previous section. I just wanted some clarification on the part about the California vote, the California board having 1 vote for NCARB. Am I hearing that correctly, that we are 1 member board of NCARB, which has, I forget what it is, 55 or 60 jurisdictions, and our member board only has 1 vote?
This is Laura. That's correct. So there's 55 member jurisdictions of NCARB, and so each one has 1 vote, regardless of size.
Okay. I mean, interesting. I mean, I mean, our West Carb, committee clearly is so much more diverse, and that's clearly the root of the issue of the diversity on the national page. And so I don't know if today's the venue, or some venue in the future, but feels like this is something like, NCARB clearly needs us and wants us and pulls us towards them and does everything they can to sort of reach out. But I don't think we're doing anything to sort of maximize our voice or some of the other states that have larger contingencies as well. But that seems like it should be a priority of us, is to, I mean, this is such a dated sort of electoral college, issue. It's so deeply rooted, but it seems like the root of the diversity problem within NCARB, which is, I just recently did the training, and, it's a big problem.
I will add to that, and I don't know if this is Denise Campos, and I don't know if this addresses the same issue as far as not having a large vote considering the population of architects in California. But there is an opportunity for people to apply to be on committees. And I don't know if you have to be if anyone on our board can apply to be a part of it, but they've recently created a position for members of the public. I know that Nilsa and I have both applied to be on NCARB committees. And so that's an opportunity for any one of us to be more involved and have a seat at the table.
So, great observations. I could not agree more on the diversity issues. I think it will be. I think we can make some contributions to the national stage if we have a plan together. Maybe this can be an issue of our communication committee. That will be my suggestion. How can we use our diversity as example to influence at the national scale? But I see Pascal has a hand up. Pascal, are you intend to speak?
Yes, I am. Thank you. So let me turn my hand off. On the issue of the candidates, there are essentially only 2 offices that are running have an election. Everybody else is running uncontested. In the office of secretary, I just wanted to say something on behalf of Mary Morissette. I've spent 4 years with Mary on the Model Law Task Force, and I just wanted to speak on her behalf, noting that she's a champion of diversity and very much focused on being a consensus builder. With regards to the public director office, I think that Gary Eli has, or E, I think it's Gary E, is how it's pronounced, coming from the construction side of the industry would be a good representative to have as a public director. Yeah, and those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, which is the most important. Helping our members to evaluate our options.
Right. So, Tian, may I speak?
You want? I have Nilza and Sylvia.
Yeah.
Okay. You go first, Sylvia, and then Nilza
Okay,
later.
sure. I'm happy to. Okay, and I want to reiterate the support that we need to show for Mary. She is from the state of Colorado, and I totally agree with Pascal. I've worked with her too for the past several years, and she is doing something what we call jumping the the queue, which is so important for people of diversity to do so, because of the fact that it was the same faces that kept going up the food chain, if you will. And she decided to take the plunge and jump into the secretary position or to run for it. First of all, remember, she's part of the Region 6 group, so we do work with her really closely. The other two candidates are incredible people, Stephen and Ken, but we need to support Mary because number one, she's from our region. Number two, she is a very, very devoted Endcard participant and has been for a number of years. And then to the two candidates for public director, I couldn't agree more with Pascal. Gary, I got to know him at the last meeting, and he is very different than the rest of the candidates because he is from the construction sector, and he's to make things even more interesting for the board. He's quite a character, and brings sort of a very, very different approach and sort of a more like a rough and tumble approach, which I think could be refreshing, you know. And then to address the diversity issue on the national basis, the troops are definitely restless, or natives, whatever the word term is. Everybody in the on the board members are very aware of the lack of diversity going up the responsibilities as we go from state to national. And so to that end, a diversity committee was formed. It's a national committee. I'm on it. However, I am not satisfied with the direction it's going. It's going extremely slowly, kind of like molasses, and it's not effective. So I will take it upon myself to give Mike Armstrong a call. He is the executive director of NCARB. I've been wanting to do so. Nilza did try to attend a meeting, and she was not allowed to attend the meeting, which just absolutely made no sense at all. What kind of diversity message do you send, right? So I'm going to have a conversation with him, and I will bring that conversation back to you, hopefully before the actual meeting on the 19th. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sunny. I see your hand up.
Got to punch all the buttons so I can turn myself on here. What is our sort of protocol for communication from the board to the national board? Like, what's the route of travel for communication?
Okay, there's two ways. The more direct way, of course, is to let Tian know, and also Laura know, because they're the official representatives. Laura represents what they call the MBEs, member board executives. And so there's a whole group of member board executives that equal the number of boards. They all attend the meetings as well as their own meetings. So it's a powerful group to share information and legislation and so forth. Second person, of course, is your president, who goes to every meeting and will take whatever message you want to WestCarb. But you can also do one more thing. If you look at your director of candidates, Ed Marley is running for director of Region 6. This will be his, if I'm not incorrect, Laura, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is his second time. And he's doing that because he wants to. Is that correct? Yeah. It's because he wants to move up into the national group and become a national board member. But he has to wait out a year. So he decided to do a second year. He is really, really good. He's from Arizona. So therefore he's in Region 6. You can email him, text him, call him, and he will take your issue right to the board. So that's another way of doing it.
Okay.
I'd like to turn to Nilza and Pascal. Are you continue one talk or are you done?
No, I have, that's my hands up, yes. Doesn't mean no one
Nilza, please.
Hi, I wanted to piggyback off what Sunny and Sylvia said in terms of the diversity. It was definitely a very jarring experience for me to be thrown out of a meeting, I have to say. I was literally sitting in the meeting and I was asked to leave by the chair of actually it wasn't even the chair. It was a woman of color that had to ask me to leave. The chair did not do it. So yeah, it was definitely a very humbling and horrible experience that a woman of color had to experience. Nonetheless, I have been asked by the chair to sit on the diversity committee for the 2020-21 election year. So I'm going to serve and see whether I can maybe make some strides to a better, more inclusive policy within Endcard, but I think there is a lot of education that needs to happen. I don't think they get it as a whole. I don't think the board gets it. I don't think the chair of the organization gets it. And hopefully with the 3 scheduled virtual meetings that we have, we will make some strides. I don't know, but yeah, that's what happened to me at the last meeting. Thank you.
Can I ask what is the meeting that you were asked not to join? What particular meeting?
Sure. The diversity committee had an expert from an expert in diversity come and talk to the committee about communication, words, how they use certain things to ensure that there's more inclusivity and that you're not treating members of diverse committees or communities in a not so favorable manner. So I was excited to hear what this gentleman had to say. So I went and I showed up very early, was right on time so that I could be in this meeting. And at that moment, while I was waiting in the conference room, one of the Endcard staff members was asked by the chair to ask me to leave because I wasn't authorized to be in the room. So first of all, to ask a woman of color to ask another woman of color to leave the room was a very flawed tactic. And I left. I got a call or a text maybe 20 minutes later asking me to come back because, you know, they had reconsidered. But at that point, it was just a little too late. Bottom line is that they need quite the education process to ensure that this does not happen to any other person of color during their national meeting. And I was also told, I also asked, well, can I sit in it? I'm a member of the public. I can just, you know, sit and I'm not going to vote. I just want to hear. And they said, according to whatever nonprofit they are, that they don't have to open the meetings to the public. So that's in the short what happened to me.
But the main reason they disinvite you because this is for the committee who has a specific number of
I'm a brown woman. That's how I felt. I don't know what the reasoning is because there's nothing that they can say that was that is justifying, but it's because I was a brown woman. And I have to tell you that immediately my first instinct was to resign. But then if I did, then my voice would be lost. So I decided that it's probably best for me to stay there and continue the work that we are doing in California and hopefully make some strides in the nation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for sharing the incident. Pascal, you're on.
Yes, thank you, Tian. I just wanted to briefly state that there was an early response to Sunny on the question of the amount of delegation that we have, or voting delegation that California has, and which is a good point. But with every state having one vote, I think that's sort of a balance. It doesn't allow opinion or voting to get skewed by virtue of New York being the second largest number of architects in the state, and or California than New York, so that it's not dominated by a larger state. So, and to some respects, it's fair that everybody gets one vote. But I can't underscore enough the point that Sylvia made about being on committees or volunteering for committees. Because if you're able to get on a committee, you in fact are able to bring the voice of California to that committee. And in all fairness, when you speak in these committees, and then we have forums, you have to deal with the fact that everybody kind of sits back when California is going to speak, because California is looked upon as perhaps a little goofy anyway to begin with. So that just comes with the territory. So you have to be, have your conviction and make your statement and bring the best interest of California. Through the years, that's how individuals like John Baker and myself have been able to preserve the multiple pathways from being scratched out of the intern development program, the IPEL program, and the Model Law Task Force. You have to bring that California voice, and the way to bring that California voice is to get on a committee. So how do you get on a committee? That's the big question. And as you look at the list of candidates, well, that represents a food chain. The first vice president is going to be the president next year, followed by the year after that by the second vice president, Bayless Ward. Followed the year after that, if John makes it into one of those president positions, he'll be the third year. And then Mary Morrissette moving up. That's the food chain. So what you can do, these committee members are appointed by the president that's in the seat. So if you want to be in a committee and your requests or your queries are falling on deaf ears, start writing, soliciting, expressing your interest, making your case to Alfred, Bayless, John, and Mary. And so by the time they become president, hopefully you've rattled the cage loud enough and often enough that they know that you're very much interested in serving on a committee. So that's it.
Thank you, Alan. I would like to follow up your comments a little bit, but before I do that, I want to ask Nilsa, your hand is still on. You want to talk?
No, thank you. Sorry, I forgot to turn it off.
So I just give you myself an anecdote. When I believe something, I see, I honestly see Endcard is more a traditional organization with these, more like a technical club-like. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but I see how can I make some influence. I'm a firm believer a multiple paths to licensure. For example, I'm a firm believer that people who have enough experience can be a wonderful architect. So I just devoted all these years. Now this is my 5th years, maybe or longer, to work on the committee assignment, which is a broadly experienced architect, now alternative certificate. So I just doing this kind of, it's a mandate. It's not a glorious work, but by doing so, you insert yourself to push to the value that you believe to. So yeah, I could not agree more that if you have particular like Nilsa and Denise, you really should look into, there's multiple committees. Some of these committees really focus on the organizational, political, and philosophical things. Bylaws, for example, can make huge difference. Anyway, I really like this conversation. I think that is the best conversation, even compared with all our face-to-face meetings. Amazing that we have. Go ahead. Where's the next person, Charles? Sunny, you want to say something?
Sure, but I think Laura had a quick thing that she wanted to say, and I'm happy to speak after her.
No, I was just going to mention that you had your hand raised. I won't comment.
Let me turn my mic back on. I just wanted to let you all know that I recently accepted or had applied for a couple of committee positions, and I was approved for a ARE 5.0 development subcommittee and practice management. So I did do that, and I also just recently completed like the NCARB training, which was very interesting, where I definitely got insight into this. And it is clear it's an old timers sort of committee, and that there's this path of, secession. But I do want to state that that California is a big state, and we have a lot of testing takers that are subscribing to the NCARB model that are candidates within our state, and a lot of architects in the state of California. And I do think that if we pushed harder as a member board, it would go a long way. And so I don't know what that looks like, and certainly we're not going to solve that and get into that today. But I do think that this model of equal state, equal vote is very sort of old-fashioned. And while I understand the problems with giving proportionate votes to larger states and smaller states feeling left out, it sort of reeks of this sort of electoral 13 colony slave state sort of compromise that we're still dealing with today in our sort of national and federal politics. And so I don't know. I think we sort of use our size and our might to at least sort of push harder, sort of out of the committee level somehow in the future. I'd certainly like to see us do that. So I just wanted to sort of reiterate that again.
And following your comments, I wanted to share that I've accepted to join the ethics case study work group committee.
Great. So Laura, you have something?
I do. This is Laura. Thanks. I'm sorry. I said I wasn't going to comment. And this is really more an issue for the members than for staff, but I was just going to give you my observation as a staff member the last couple of years and working with NCARB. I agree. I think the committees do a really good job of being inclusive and getting a lot of good feedback to NCARB. But if you look at like the resume for the first Vice President-elect, Alfred Vidadari, who is a great candidate, he started volunteering on a committee in 2005. And so it takes quite a long time to work your way up the chain in NCARB. As Sylvia mentioned, Mary Morissette is trying to jump that. But if the board is interested in seeing some more diversity at NCARB, you would have to maybe suggest some changes, bigger changes to the process.
Absolutely.
Maybe.
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
Okay. Why not consider maybe Laura at some future board meetings we will devote to one agenda item that the board members provide a quick update their committee work at the NCARB, and see if they have opportunity to bring some of the message from the board at the committee level.
Sure, we can add that as an item.
Okay, so I have Sylvia, then after that, Pascal.
Okay, so just to pile on to all the assignments, I've been assigned to the Policy Advisory Committee by Bob Calvani. Now, Bob Calvani is going to be the new president this year, starting in June. He is from New Mexico. Very, very good guy. I think he gets everything that we're talking about. But first of all, he's from West Carb, and West Carb is already more diverse than a lot of the other regions. So Bob Calvani is somebody that you can reach out to directly if anybody's interested in joining a committee, even at this late date, because they did make these positions. I think we were all sent these probably a week or two ago. So in my opinion, it's not too late. If you want to get to know him a little bit, just contact me and I'll I'll speak on your behalf.
Pascal, your turn.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that the actual solicitation for committee membership was several months ago. And I think just last week or so, those who had made application were notified as to whether they were selected or not, or offered an invitation to join the committee. I don't know if it's too late or not. There's always people, I know for the various committees that I've been on, there always seems to be a changing of the guard sometimes mid-year, and somebody will leave and somebody else will come in. So definitely, as I said before, express your interest to the president who's in the seat at the time, and then start working on that chain, on the food chain list of presidents to come. Thank you.
So what I heard is overwhelming interest to influence Endcard or a national level that the issues of diversity and California take pride of. So I believe if we have an agenda item in future meetings, talk about our each role and what we can do at the committee level. I like to do, incremental approach, and so that at least we can have some momentums, ongoing momentums, and we can share our work and see if we collectively can deliver a message to an Endcard in a more cohesive fashion. So I think that's my suggestion as a result of today's discussion, for Laura to think about it.
I have one question, and then I see Brett has a question too. My question is, when our term ends on the State Architects Board, would we be able to remain on the NCARB committee, or would we then no longer be eligible?
No, you can stay on the committee. There's no requirement to be current board member.
May I ask you, this is Brett. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I fully support what Tien said about putting it on our agenda, but I was wondering if we could be a little more specific in direction on what we discuss at that, when that item comes up next time. I was wondering if staff could look at whether the succession custom and practice at NCARB is just custom and practice, or whether there's something in their regulations. And because if we want to go question that, it would be good if we had all the information at hand about what we're dealing with, whether we're dealing with whether our NCARB representatives should ask for a change in their regulations if succession is in their regs, or whether there's something less formal that we need to request to change the succession. Because I see the 10 plus years of succession as really postponing beyond the length of time that should be postponed. More diversity at the highest level. Second, maybe we staff can prepare a resolution for consideration for a vote of our board in a letter to NCARB about the succession policy. Maybe Tien, that's moving too fast for you, but I'd like us to discuss that for a minute.
No, I actually fully support the full spectrum of effort. Not too fast for me at all. But I remember over the years, has committees also working on the organization's bylaws. I don't know, Pascal might be on bylaws committee. So again, these are the opportunity. Does not mean we have to go through step by step. We can do something more revolutionary as well. So now I see Pascal's hand again, and Sylvia. Pascal, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to suggest, because there are some of us already that's been voiced, we're on committees, and some of us maybe even have been appointed to 2 committees. If we could, all committee members could send their committees and meeting dates to, I don't know, maybe Laura, so that that list can be compiled and distributed to the board so that the board is aware of what board members are serving on what committees and when they're going to be meeting. I think that would be helpful in shaping our thinking and communication with one another. So that's, I wanted to suggest that. Thank you.
Good suggestion, Laura. Could you consider that?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to compile that. That's a good idea.
Sylvia and then Sunny.
That's a really good idea. I like that, Pascal. So I got appointed to 2 other committees because I think they're putting me on fast track. Just to your point, Sunny, about the 10 years. Or, I mean, I'm sorry, Brett, you mentioned that. So they're trying to get me on fast track. So here are my 3 committees. I'm also on Regional Leadership Committee, and this may be what you're talking about, Brett. It says here, Regional Leadership Committee addresses issues specific to the regions of the council, plan the regional summit, okay, and then provide input into the planning and development of membership engagement. And then they also review resolutions submitted by the regions. So this is something that is a really important appointment, because then what we're doing is I'll be able to talk with all of these other regional leaders that are within this overall committee. And between now and the end of the year, there's going to be 3 virtual meetings of 2 hours each. So hopefully they'll be quite substantial. So I'm glad that I'm on that committee. And then I did get reappointed to the diversity committee, but I'm committed, you guys. I'm going to try to change that leadership out. I believe they have the wrong chair. So, but anyway, that's good that I'm going back on that.
You mentioned you have a 3. Where's another one?
The third one I already mentioned earlier, the Policy Advisory Committee. Let me see what that one's about. Okay, that may have something to do with something that we.
It's very good. That's, I think, that has quite a bit of influence on all 3 together on the issues we discuss about.
I'm on fast track. That's what it is. Yeah. They need some diversity at the top level, of course.
Sunny, you have something, then Pascal.
First of all, great job, Sylvia, and Pasquale as well. These things take a lot of time and commitment, so I appreciate that you both have been putting the time in, because that's absolutely what's going to have to be done. And again, I'm new at this, so I certainly don't understand the ins and outs of how it works completely. But what I'm seeing early on in my limited interaction is that the way in which we, our member board is of a group is sort of the power seems to be taken away, is that the request from NCARB National and NCARB West in that we sort of join these subcommittees is that it takes the members of our board and sort of separates them and puts them on these sort of small committees. And so not only do we only have 1 vote as a state nationally, but then it takes our voice and sort of disperses it in small amounts and small subcommittees around. And so, in some ways, if you have a couple of members who put a lot of time in, for instance, like Pasquale and Sylvia, obviously that's having a huge impact, like with Pasquale, with iPal, for instance, and like Sylvia's talking about with fast tracking it to getting that 1 voice. But at the end of the day, it's like, that's her voice sort of going up through the track. And as you can see, that like nationally, she's playing against a much larger playing field. So anyway, I am just still back here sort of reiterating that at some point it would be great if one of our committees sort of took this on as, how do we communicate directly with our 1 vote or 1 vote or our 1 voice with the national organization, to just basically let them know that, like, look, here's our priorities, and we're not seeing them being met as quickly as we'd like to. And I'd like to see us just sort of fast track that and get that voice out there as quickly as possible, and not necessarily in these smaller subcommittees and like a rumble. I'd like to see it on a sort of bigger communication with the national board.
Sunny, I think your observation is wonderful, and thank you for the new perspective. I think we need to get this into our day-to-day business. At the same time, as we try to influence the national level, I think we also need more well-define our objective, shape our message. What is the message is exactly about? So you are so accurate. My personal experience, I would contribute in a very, very isolated way in your your description, and only to insert myself to make some influence on the front that I believe to. So that said, they continue to appoint me, ask me to do the alternative certification committees, and then they recently appointed me for the education committee because my years in this area volunteer for them. Anyway, Pascal.
Yeah, thank you, Tian. I just wanted to say something that I think should be said about NCARB. I've been on the board since 2007, and the NCARB of 2007 is a drastically different NCARB today. And that's come, I think, about more so from the influence and leadership of Michael Armstrong. But I also wanted to say that I am really kind of excited to hear the enthusiasm that's coming from board members like Sunny here and wanting to make the, to be the change, because just this year, and I think it's pretty evident in everything we do in here. You just watch the nightly news. If you don't believe it, there's been a breach in the wall of NCARB and their traditional thinking. So this is a perfect window to jump in and really start making some noise. So good luck to everybody on that.
Yeah, Sonny, I'm going to not drag, but pull you up. That would be awesome.
Sunny, your hand is still on.
I apologize.
Okay. Any further discussions? Any members of staff want to say something after your turn?
Hi, real quick. So I was looking on the NCARB site, and it doesn't look like they list all the committees. It's not really easy to find. And of the ones that they do have listed, they don't have the diversity committee listed on there. And so if this is really a value for them, they should probably put that on the page where you find the committees. So that needs to be updated on their website. And I emailed them to see if they can give me a list of all the committees, because it's not, you can't see all of the ones that they have, and to know which ones allow public members. So that's what I've done.
I believe all committees allow public members, because on the diversity committee, there's some public members as well.
Okay, and then which ones are open? Since if they're going to make announcements this week, we will need to know which ones are open.
Exactly.
Probably not all committees. For example, the alternative certificate committee may only take architect. So, but the majority of committee is not required to be an architect.
This is Denise. I heard board members ask about beyond having NCARB be an agenda item where we update our work on committees, but actually having action items or maybe a subcommittee of our board. I guess my question is to staff, how do we go about doing that? Like, does that need to be an item for a future meeting, or can we just designate a committee at this point, or have an offline conversation to make sure that we're actually taking next steps?
So I suggest that what we can do more is immediately we can have a communication committee take on this as a one of their work. And then we decide if we need an additional committee just for that.
Does that require a vote, or we just add that to the communications committee, to our task list.
I don't think, Laura, you can speak up. I don't think we need a vote. As a chair at the next meeting, for example, if we report to our committee work, I said, well, we like this directed to communication committee. But Laura, you decide.
So this is Laura. You could have the communications committee do it. It wouldn't require a vote. You could also perhaps consider giving it to the executive committee, because that's all board members.
Yes.
That's the committee that has all board members. But Brett also brought up a couple of suggestions as to kind of different options to look at as to whether the board wants to propose a resolution, write a letter. So I suggested for the next board meeting with this item, staff can prepare kind of some information to put in the packet, kind of go through the questions Brett asked, and as Tian suggested, like really defining what the message is the board wants to put forward. And then maybe at that meeting, you can decide what direction you want to go. If you want to send it to the executive committee or communications, if you want to just start communications with Endcard more directly. So just an idea for you to consider.
I would be happy to take it on in the communications committee, but I think it makes more sense to take it to the executive board because not everybody in the communications committee is familiar with Endcard or with the conversations that we're having here. And in the past, we've only met once or twice a year. So I'd rather it go to our executive board to move this along more quickly.
I could support that too.
And I don't think that requires a motion. We can just set the next executive committee meeting after this meeting.
So if that is the case, then we maybe have a better structure. So our committees members will report to the executive committee, and the staff then will be summarize that conversation, then report at the full board meeting. Good. Looks like we have a pass. Laura, what do you think?
I think that's a good way to go.
Thank you. It's a wonderful discussion, and we should do more of web meetings, not person to person anymore.
As long as the executive order allows it, we can do it.
Okay. All right. So Laura, take on the final item. Well, we already discussed about. So you have an option of an actual vote on some members, or you want me to speak for you. And by the way, I fully support all your observations. And another added benefit of Mary for our region, is that break the pattern a little bit because she's the person who jumps in. So if we're talking about, new look, maybe that is our opportunity. And so as the construction background theory, and which is my friend CDT. Okay, so he's taking the CDT exam too. So anyway, I am fully behind this two vote. Any other members that has any concerns, options, observations? If not, I just loyally vote that to for the board. I hear no comment.
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, Laura, you decide you want to vote or just I go vote.
This is Laura. Tara, can you tell us if we would need a motion if John is just going to exercise his discretion in the voting and take into consideration the board members' comments?
This is Tara. I know in the past you have just allowed, or you've given the responsibility to the person attending to use their discretion. And I think you've had a deliberative conversation. He has some direction on which to go, so that's fine. But I did want to note that Brett was making a comment, but we didn't hear it. So could we hear from Brett?
Brett,
And the microphone on.
Hi, sorry. I was just asking Lori if she heard my request that when you report back at the our next meeting, you let us know if that's, or maybe you told us that it's bylaws and not custom and practice that have the succession rules at Endcard.
Yes, I will include that in the next report. I think it is just custom and practice, but I will do some research and include that.
Thank you.
This is Tara. I also wanted to clarify that you need to avoid any serial communications. So if you are compiling information, you need to send it to Laura, not the executive committee. So it's not more than 2 members having a communication.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding that. Very good. All right. Is that your plan? You move on to the next one?
Yes, I think we can move on to agenda item J, the
Okay.
executive officer's report.
So since we don't have action, we still need to open up to public comment. Why not? Let's see if anyone wants to comment.
Okay.
All right, this is the moderator, and I will be opening up the question and answer panel. The question and answer panel is now available. If you would like to make a public comment, please type, "I would like to make a comment" in the ask field and send it to all panelists. If you do not see the question and answer panel, please click on the question mark within a box at the bottom lower middle of your screen. We'll give you a few moments. And please do not type your questions, simply type, "I would like to make a comment," and we will unmute you in the order that you submit your requests. This is the moderator, and we do have a public member that would like to make a comment. So this person is Glenn. And Glenn, give me a moment. I will find you, and I will let you know when you have been unmuted. All right, Glenn, you've been unmuted.
Hi, this is Glenn Gall. I'm on the PQ committee, and I'd like to commend you all for a great meeting today. It's been of great interest to me. The one thing about volunteering, though, for NCARB committees, you go to the NCARB site and it says contact your state board. And frankly, I was always of the understanding that the only persons that were able to be on NCARB committees were board members. Is there any clarification of this? Thanks.
My experience, Glenn, this is Tian. Thank you for joining the meeting and make a remark. I appreciate it. I think the appointment always start to appoint a member of a board member. And once you are on the appointment, and there's no limit. And I see most of my fellow committee members, and not most, maybe half of them are not even on current board. So if you really wanted the detail, maybe we have to officially communicate with NCARB. I don't know if they have very specific bylaws on it. Laura, do you have anything added to?
This is Laura. No, I'm not sure what the restrictions are. I can happy to add that to the research for the next meeting.
Great. Laura, I'd like to see that as well because there is protocol, Glenn, but I actually don't know either. So it's good for us to know officially. I would hope that all NCARB members are allowed to join a committee. That just makes total sense. So let's see what Laura finds, and if it's not the case, then we may have to do some activist work on that. Okay.
This is the moderator. We have no more requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the question and answer panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, I'll do that.
Okay, we are moving to
Tian, I have a comment. Tian, I did have a comment.
Go ahead. I blocked my screen. Did not see your hand.
Okay, great. Terrific. Thank you. Just as a quick response, I probably serve as a living, breathing example of not being a board member. My board term actually expires with this meeting, but yet I've been appointed to 2 committees into the next year, and I am not NCARB certified either. So I guess you can get in, you can get in, and I don't know if there's any restrictions. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Any other comments? Okay, Laura, please give update on board's administration, management, examination, licensing, and enforcement programs.
Okay, this is Laura. Thank you. So this is item J in the packet. You have the written report, so I'm just going to go over a couple highlights and then ask for any questions you might have. The next Professional Qualifications Committee meeting is October 30th. We have talked about holding an Regulatory Enforcement Committee meeting, so we need to set the date for that. So I'll notify the board members. We'll work with the chair and also check to see if we need another Communications Committee meeting. I just want to thank the board staff. Obviously, with COVID-19, we've made a lot of changes in a short amount of time, and so the majority of the staff at this point are teleworking. The Department of Consumer Affairs made that transition happen for all the staff, and we're thankful for that. And so we're starting to transition a little bit more to have a few more staff return to the office, but for the most part, we'll keep staff, the majority of staff teleworking for the foreseeable future. Business modernization, I sent the board members an update, but we were supposed to move into our next phase and have funding in the upcoming budget to proceed with selecting a vendor for our new program. And that budget change proposal got eliminated as the governor made changes to his proposed budget. So that process is on hold, but hopefully we will be able to get the money in the following year. We have the update on the regulations is in the packet. And then moving on to page 5, we start with the statistics for the ARE, which look pretty similar to what we've seen in the past. You have the California performance and then the multi-year performance comparison. And on to page 6, we have data on the CSE. Is there any questions on those statistics? Okay. I don't see any questions. So moving on, additional CSE data, and then we have the enforcement program update with the actions taken since the last board meeting. And then following that, we have the LATC update. The LATC did not meet since the last board meeting. They will look to meet later in the year. They canceled their meeting that was going to occur last month. So there's not any new information from LATC. Are there any questions from the board members? No? Okay. Thank you.
That's it? That's all you have?
That's all I have.
Okay. So we have one more item before closed session. We will tentatively have 2 more meetings planned for this year, but it may change. Laura, you want to give some explanations?
Sure. So this is item K. It's got the schedule for the meetings for the rest of the year. We had planned to hold a meeting in September in Southern California. I think we changed locations, and then December in the Bay Area. So as long as the governor's executive order is in place, the board can meet this way through WebEx. And so I think that maybe is the idea for the next board meeting. As long as we can continue to meet this way, that might be preferable to avoid travel. So we will just kind of keep monitoring to see, how long we have that authority for. So if there aren't any objections, we'll plan on having the September board meeting in the same format.
So I like to see if anyone has a strong opinion on it. I'm thinking the September meeting is likely still in the, in terms of the virus situation, still in the dilemma. And if you are not object to planning on meeting like this one, web-based, I would think we're moving towards that direction. I can give you confirmation rather quickly.
So,
Honey, go ahead.
sorry. What did you? Oh, Sunny, sorry. Go ahead, Sunny.
Just a brief question. We touched on this briefly yesterday, but is accessibility for the online meetings that we're having on WebEx equal to our in-person meetings? And specifically when it comes to public comment?
That's a good question. I don't know if Tara would like to add to this at all. The accessibility is different from our regular meetings in that if we meet anytime any members at a physical location for a regular board meeting, if we do a teleconference, it has to be open to the public, which is not the case with this type of format. We still have the option for public comment in this format, but Tara, I don't know if you have anything further to add to that.
I would actually point out that we're seeing an increase in public participation across other boards. I also provide counsel to the Veterinary Medical Board, and at one of their meetings, they had 150 participants online versus maybe 30 or 40 that we normally would get in person. So I think this is actually increasing the ability for the public to participate, as long as each board is maintaining the process to provide the public to comment on each action the board is about to take.
Sunny, with my experience with our own agency, we now it's after six online meeting now. Ways which public can communicate actually provides more flexibilities because physical transportation become not critical. So have not heard any complaints that past the 6 meetings. So just so you know.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Yeah, Pascal. Pascal, go ahead. I see your head.
Okay, there I am. I get the sense you're going to get ready to close this session pretty soon here. And I just wanted to make... We
are closing this session.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make 2 points. In order to go to the next meeting to close session, I believe we need to go back and link in through the meeting again and join. If I understood that correctly from our practice session. If we're going to do that, the only way I can connect is through the browser connection. So if Gabe lets me in through the browser connection, I would appreciate it so I could be a part of that meeting. And then this happened to me once before, and it happened again today. But as I was gallivanting through cyberspace trying to get into the meeting, you all took vote on the meeting minutes from the last meeting. And I did have a correction that I wasn't able to voice. So I don't know what the technical protocol is to make that correction to the approved meeting minutes. I can voice what my correction is, and then we can go from there. If I don't know what the best way to handle this is, let me know. Tell me.
Tara, go ahead, Tara.
Okay. So on the meeting minutes, on page 8. Yes.
Before you speak, let Tara respond to you first.
So what you can do is reopen that item, which is item E. Reopen the vote. You would be reconsidering the prior vote to change it to, I presume, amend the meeting minutes. And then you would have to take a new vote on that. So you would have to vote to reopen the item and then vote on approving the amended meeting minutes.
This is Nelsa. I vote to open the item E.
Pascal, do you feel we should have proceeded that way?
I second the motion.
Okay, good. Madam Secretary, let's call the roll.
Tian Fan,
Yes.
Denise Campos,
Yes.
Nilsa Serrano, yes. Malcolm Gladstone. Malcolm,
Yes.
Pascual Gutierrez,
Yes.
Sylvia Kwan,
Yes.
Ebony Lewis,
Aye.
Robert Perman,
Aye.
and Charles Ward.
Yes.
Pascal, we can move to your suggested, I guess there will be a motion and someone will second your revision.
So I'd like to make a motion on the meeting minutes on page 8 of the meeting minutes. The second to the last paragraph of that page, the first line reads, Mr. Gutierrez acknowledged that the board does not exist to protect the consumer. If that's what I said, it was a mistake. I didn't mean the consumer. That word consumer should be stricken and replaced by the word architect. That's my motion.
Okay, so to be clear, I think your motion is to approve the meeting minutes as amended to revise on page 8, the second from the bottom paragraph, to insert after does the word not, and remove and replace the word consumer with architect. Is that correct?
Not correct. I'll read it. Does not exist to protect the, strike the word consumer and replace it with architect.
So I guess what I'm saying is I don't see the word not in the first line of that paragraph. I see it just says does exist to protect the consumer. So I think it seems like we need to insert the word not. The word does not exist to protect the architect. Is that right?
Correct. You're correct. You're correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Tara, this is Laura. So, but is it an issue if this is the way it's written in the minutes is the way it actually occurred at the meeting and Pascal's changing his comment? Do we need to just change it and add it to these current minutes for this meeting? Or is that not an issue?
Oh, I see what you're saying. He stated it this way, but he wants to go back and clarify the comment that he made at the prior meeting. So I would agree with you. Whatever was said at the meeting must be accurately reflected in the meeting minutes. If you want to clarify your comment in the prior meeting, we can add that to today's meeting minutes so that you're clarifying that statement made at the last meeting.
Sunny has a comment.
This is Charles Ward. May I make a comment? It's not my recollection. It's my recollection that he said what he's stating today, not what's in the meeting minutes. So are we absolutely certain that the meeting minutes are correct?
This is Laura. I wouldn't swear on it, but we do spend like several rounds going through it and staff go back and listen to the transcript to try to capture it accurately.
Okay, I guess that was my bigger point. But I certainly knew what he was talking about the day of the meeting, I guess is my point.
Can I jump in? So this is Pasquale. Reading the meeting minutes just as they're written does not alter the context of my statement. So if it makes things really easy and less cumbersome, I can withdraw my request for amendment because the context is not really modified by the written word.
Those were my thoughts when I read it originally as well, and that's why I didn't say anything about it.
We're already in the motion.
So I have a new motion. Are you ready, Tian?
Okay.
So my motion is to, well, I don't know, maybe Tara will have to help me with the verbiage, but to allow the meeting minutes to stand as they were reviewed and approved.
I think it's cleaner if we just revote on the approving the meeting minutes. We just do a new vote with no amendments.
Oh, okay, I will agree with this way. It's cleaner, yeah. So, who can form a motion that voting on approval the meeting minutes as ordered?
So moved. Pasquale speaking.
Second, Robert.
Okay, Madam Secretary. Nyoza, you can call a roll.
Okay. Tian Craig,
Yes.
Denise Campos,
Aye.
Nilsa Serrano, yes. Malcolm Brad Godstone, you're muted. Still muted.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Pascual Gutierrez,
Yes.
Sylvia Kwan,
Yes.
Ebony Lewis,
Aye.
Robert Kerman,
Yes.
Charles Ward.
Yes.
Motion approved.
John,
But-
this is
yeah.
Laura. Could you clarify who made the second on that motion? I didn't catch that.
Pascal.
No,
Robert
Pascal moved it,
seconded.
right?
He made the
Robert
motion.
Salmon.
So I had Pascal making the motion, and who made the second?
No, I
Aye,
made the
Robert
motion.
Salmon.
I made the motion, Pascal second.
Okay, thank you.
So we are at the 108. How long is the break? Will be good for us. And also, we need to give some time for Pascal to switch to a different link. Make sure it takes some time. 20 minutes, 22 minutes, too little?
Why don't we say 1:30? Is that?
Yeah, that's 22
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
John, this is Laura. We have one of our staff members with their hand raised. Would you mind calling on Kim?
Yes, Kim, please. Speaking. Kim, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, well, I will try to find what her question is.
Tian, this is on behalf of Kim. She just wanted to know who made the motion and who seconded, and it's been
Yeah,
done.
We've got it.
Thank you.
Tara has a question.
Okay, so I just want to, keep the record clear.
Go ahead.
I need you to recess open session,
I'm
and
saying
then we will convene closed session through the other link.
yes.
And and let the public know that we will not be reopening open session just to adjourn. We will be doing that pursuant to the agenda. We will be doing that adjournment in closed session.
Okay, let me repeat the whole thing. We are moving to the closed session, and please turn off the audio record. And due to the technological limitation, adjournment will not be broadcast. Adjournment will be immediately follow the closed session, and there will be no other items of business discussed. That's sufficient? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So with that,
I think Denise had a question.
yeah, Denise.
Thank you.
Denise, do you need to say something?
No, no questions.
We are now moving into a closed session after a brief break, and then we will resume at 1:30. And members, don't forget you need to go to a different link for the closed session. Thank you.
Thank you.